continue. So moving to our last speaker, I think I want to introduce Josh Boggi, who is an international community manager at the Invictus Games Foundation, a former Royal Engineer who overcame life-changing injuries. Josh has competed in the Invictus Games and continues to inspire not just the veteran community, but all communities on a global basis. And I also note that Alex Crick is in the audience, who was his surgeon as well. So that's a great pairing there. So, Josh, without further ado, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you very much, Guy. Can I just check that you can hear me properly?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Perfect. Can I have the next slide, please? Good afternoon, sirs, ma'ams, ladies and gents. It's a real privilege to be here today, back amongst some familiar faces and old friends, people like yourself, Guy, Alex Crick, who you just mentioned, Greg Stevenson, and others who've been part of this journey in different ways. When I was asked to speak, I was told to be honest, to share my personal journey, the highs, the lows, and give my appraisal of the NHS. Today's theme is raising the bar higher. I can tell you I've seen exactly what that looks like in practice. So let me start with this. I would not be sitting here without the NHS. Twice in my life, I've been in situations where my story could have ended very differently. Twice, the NHS stepped in. Twice, they have saved me. Next slide, please. On New Year's Eve 2010, I was serving in Afghanistan. It was still dark when we were getting ready to go out on a dawn patrol. The routine was the same as always. Put your kit on, body armour, helmet, checking weapons, quiet nods to the lads. We stepped out of the back gate and into the cold morning air. The dew was rising off the ground where it was warming up. It was another winter patrol. Cold, tense, but routine. You learn to read every shadow, every corner, every sound. Not long after we left, though, an IED went off, an improvised explosive device went off at the front of patrol. And a member of the Guards regiment we were working with was blown up in an instant. He became a triple amputee. Within 30 minutes, he'd been CASEVAC'd, casualty evacuation, back to Camp Bastion. We were still reeling from what had happened when it was my turn. I was lying in a ditch, fighting for my life, having stepped on an IED, losing both my legs and severe damage to my right arm, which resulted in a further amputation. My team jumped straight in and started treating me. I felt no pain whatsoever. The shock and the adrenaline had kicked in, but I knew I was in trouble. But oddly, I wasn't worried about my legs. I looked at my friend Stu, who was trying to put a tourniquet on my left leg, and say, Stu, don't worry about my legs. Is everything still between my legs? He put his hand straight down my trousers, gave me the thumbs up and went, yes, mate, you're still as small as ever. Even in the middle of the chaos, that bit of humour mattered. It told me I was still me and I was still alive. From that ditch, I was CASEVAC'd back to Camp Bastion in around 50 minutes. Within 24 hours, I was on a medevac back to the UK. I landed in Birmingham and was sent straight to the QEHB, where I came under the care of both the military and NHS staff working side by side. That's where the beginning of the chain. That was the beginning of the chain of care that stretched out 1,000 miles from the dusty track to Helmand to the very best of British medicine. A chain made up of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Next slide, please. My first memory back in Birmingham was waking up in a hospital bed surrounded by machines, lights, and a hum of activity. I should have felt broken, but instead what I felt most was that I was safe. I was in good hands. The NHS became my world for a few months. Surgeons worked miracles. Nurses who didn't just change dressings, they noticed that when I was struggling and found ways to make me laugh. Physios who pushed me harder than I wanted to go because they believed I could do more than I believed in myself. It wasn't just medical treatment. These people gave me dignity at a time when I felt stripped of it. They gave me independence when I thought I'd lost it forever. They gave me belief when I didn't think I have it, when I didn't have it in myself. And that's the key thing when I say they didn't just save my life, they gave me a foundation to start living again. That care, that humanity was the platform that allowed me to rebuild my life. Next slide, please. But survival and recovery are only part of the story. What came next was discovering who I was. And for me, that came through sport. Sport for me was medicine. Becoming fitter and stronger through sport and staying active made everyday life easier. Walking on prosthetics, doing the small things that so many take for granted. At the same time, I was still having surgeries under Miss Crick and Mr. Dunn in Salisbury. But because I was fit, recovery always seemed quicker. And because of sport, I was trying to get back on my legs or my bike too quickly. I was always pushing boundaries, much to the annoyance of both Miss Crick and Mr. Dunn. Throughout rehabilitation sport, I found strength again, and I eventually found the Invictus Games, a chance not to just compete, but to prove myself and to others that life after injury can still be full, rich, and meaningful. Sitting on my bike on those start lines, wearing my national colours, I realised the true impact of the NHS. They hadn't just kept me alive back in 2010, they'd given me a chance to live again, to achieve things I never thought possible. Next slide, please. By 2019, I thought I'd put the worst behind me. I'd rebuilt my life, found purpose, and was enjoying new challenges. Cycling had become a passion. It was my freedom, speed, and control. I was in Mallorca with friends and family on a cycling holiday. I was descending a mountain road on my hand cycle, approaching a hairpin bend when I went to apply my brakes to get around the bend, and then bang, my front tyre exploded. I remember all of it. I remember hurtling towards a lorry's undercarriage, knowing I couldn't stop and thinking, I'm dead. The screech of tyres, the sickening impact, the acceptance of my fate. I hit hard. Pain was instant, sharp and unforgiving. I knew straight away this was serious, but I was alive and I had friends with me who were able to help. And lying there, all I could think was, not again, not another fight to rebuild. How many times can one person start over again? Next slide, please. That thought, that fear was as crushing as the physical pain, because it wasn't just about the impact itself. This time I'd fractured my femur, and eventually I needed further amputation. The physical damage was severe, but the real battle was inside. It was fear of losing the independence I'd worked so hard for since Afghanistan, fear of losing the identity I'd rebuilt through years of recovery in sport. And I knew the journey ahead wasn't going to be about healing bones. It was going to be about starting all over again. Next slide, please. The first responders in Spain kept me alive. I was in intensive care for 6 days, going through multiple surgeries. In Spain, things were serious. I was given 11 units of blood, so much that I used to joke that I'd gone from Josh to Jose. Finally, 10 days after the incident, I arrived back in the UK. By then, I was in a bad way. Unknown to me, sepsis had already kicked in. This is where Miss Crick and her incredible team at Salisbury Hospital stepped in and saved my life. I would not be here speaking to you without them. And what struck me this time was how much the NHS had evolved. They didn't just treat my injuries, they recognised me. They knew my history, my background, my needs as a veteran. It was joined up, it was personal, it was human. And that's why this picture matters. After everything, the surgeries, the sepsis, the setbacks, the NHS didn't just patch me up, they got me back on my bike. That image isn't just me cycling, it's a symbol of what recovery really looks like when the NHS does what it does best. The doctors, the nurses, and the wider staff weren't just delivering treatment, they gave me reassurance, belief, and the confidence that I could rebuild again. The NHS didn't get me back on prosthetic feet, it gave me a purpose again. Twice in my life, everything fell apart. The NHS picked up the pieces and helped me put them back together. Next slide, please. And that's where I've seen real progress. The NHS today is not the NHS I first encountered in 2010. Things have moved forward. There's a greater awareness of veterans and their needs. There's recognition of that our service doesn't end when we take uniform off, and neither do the consequences. The Veterans Covenant Healthcare Alliance and Veteran Aware Hospitals have been instrumental in making that happen. Under the leadership of people like Alex Crick and Professor Tim Briggs, the NHS has set a standard that others around the world are now looking to. And that's what this picture represents. From lying in a ditch in Helmand, then a hospital bed in Spain, to skydiving next to Mount Everest. That's the distance travelled. It's not just my journey, it's proof of what the NHS makes possible. Their work, their progress is the reason veterans like myself can keep pushing boundaries. And that's why the VCHA programme matters and why continued funding and support is so important. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to end with gratitude to every NHS staff member joining us today across the country. Thank you. You gave me a second chance at life twice. To Alex Crick, Professor Tim Briggs, Guy, and the entire VCHA and Veteran Aware teams, thank you for driving this progress forward. But I want to finish with this picture. That's me and my wife Anna at an Oasis concert on a normal night out, smiles, music, fun, something that once felt impossible. And just last week, our little girl, Olivia Alexandra, there's a specific reason for that, Boggi, started school. That's what your work makes possible. Not just survival, not just recovery, but ordinary family life, memories and futures. In these challenging times, never forget that what you do matters. It matters more than you may ever know. Because if we can achieve this much already, just imagine what's possible if we keep raising the bar higher together. Thank you very much.
Josh, I can't follow that, if I'm honest. What a brilliant story, what a brilliant journey. And I think it's often forgotten that the NHS does some outstanding stuff, but we do continue to beat ourselves up. I think we'll never ever be perfect, but as long as we progress. So again, you know, I'm humbled by your story, as everyone I know will be on this call as well. So Josh, really appreciate your contribution. Really appreciated. And you know what makes it all worthwhile when I hear someone like you talk as you did. So thanks, Josh. Really happy with that.